It's really my honor today to introduce our speaker, Amber Yang. I've known her for a while, both as a student and as our most remarkable videographer who put together who monitored the holistic health program. It's a must piece to see. And she has continued her skills, and time again, I've been so impressed. And what is so impressive, and I feel so lucky as a professor to have known her at least, is that in teaching, the teacher can become the student. And I feel this rare opportunity that here is an ex-student who now I can sit with, and she becomes my teacher and knows so much more about this content. And so I won't say much about Amber, but I'll just say she's finishing a graduate program in Sonoma and has become an expert, at least, and facilitated for holistic health much of our online presence. So with much ado and with much thanks, Amber, she'll present Teaching Your Content Online with Community Building and Engagement.
I think some of you might be questioning, oh, is this holistic health? I mean, all the other videos in the series presentations were about optimizing our health, herbs and nutrition, stress management. And this one's a little different, but I think this really touches on our social health, our ability to connect well with others and feel connected in class, and that deeply affects our health. So I just want to take a moment to just acknowledge the journeys we've all had to transition to this online remote working place. Maybe some of you were already Zooming and working remotely. Maybe some of you only taught in person. Maybe some of you might not have even played with Zoom before. And when shelter in place hit, we were hit with a huge threshold moment, right? We found ourselves facing change that seemed to arrive out of nowhere. And there was very little time to prepare for this transition. And if we're tuning into the news and the social unrest and the multiple crises at hand, it wasn't just about learning how to be on Zoom. It was learning how to keep ourselves together in the process too, right? So I say threshold because a threshold isn't a simple boundary, like, oh, we're adding something new to our life. We're just changing this. A boundary is a frontier that divides two different territories and rhythms and atmospheres, right? And for teaching, for those of you who are teachers, this meant switching to Zoom, rethinking the way you do homework, the way you present, your pedagogy, the way you grade. At the same time, for many of you, learning how to navigate Zoom, learning some digital tools, wondering how to help your students engage, right? Because the shelter in place and the shutdown of our economy affects all of us differently and impacts some of us in devastating ways. So knowing that you all have been teaching for a month or so now, and maybe you're not a teacher, right? But just noticing the skills and the experience you've already developed this time. Yet I've seen time and time again how the relationship building and attention to social emotional realities is a game changer for healthy learning environments, no matter where we are or who we are. So we realize that we aren't robots that attend classes and we can leave everything chaotic happening in our lives outside the door, outside the Zoom window, right? We're human and we're multidimensional. So all of us could probably go through this year of teaching online, delivering our content. Students do the work, students get grades. Yet this presentation is for people who want to create more meaning and connection in the classroom. And now that we're teaching through Zoom, how do we do that? And how do we do that in tandem with our academic content, right? So I want to touch on these pieces in this presentation. Building relationships and meaning in the virtual classroom, and then some tools and practices that create the best environment. And the best incorporates imperfect. So like Eric said, you know, it's going to be imperfect. Many students might not have laptops, technical difficulties occur. So how do we just hold space for that? So just taking the next moment to reflect on what you've learned about online learning or teaching. This could be about you, the work you do, the things you've done. What have you learned? So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to type that in. So we're using Chatbox now as a way to engage. And I'm going to ask you to type in your response, but don't press send yet. I'm going to give you a minute and I'll play a little music. And when the minute is over, I'm going to ask you to press enter. So everyone's responses should come at the same time. We're not just going to like press enter once we type it in, okay? So we'll just take a moment to look at what others have said after that. So the question is, what have you learned about yourself or maybe about online learning now that we've transitioned to this space? So now we're just going to take a moment to just start scanning. And this is a form of us not talking as much as reading and looking at others people's responses without the verbalizing. So Robert says, I struggle to read the room and feel a bit lost on Zoom in terms of feeling connected to the students during a discussion. New opportunities and ways of doing things, but miss the in-person social connection. I learned that it takes longer for everyone to compose their thoughts than I originally thought. Appreciate the music. It's great. In large classes, I find breakout rooms challenging to have students be engaged. Students have a hard time working or coordinating in groups remotely, and being flexible and adjusting is key. Students really want to talk to each other and share experiences. Yeah, that's a really big one. Yeah, it's really hard to read the room and when the video is off. I feel that one. Wow, Blessing, I love it. You have practical things here. How to download accounts, enter breakout rooms. I like that you've played with Padlet too. That's great. Virtual vision boarding. That's fun. I like that. I've learned that in order for me to be able to do all the work on time, I need a self-discipline. I'm with you on that one. So we're here teaching online and while fostering a sense of meaning and community. And so like we said earlier, holistic health isn't just about individual health. It's really about our social health and finding ways in which we can enhance the quality of our relationships around us. And especially from a teaching perspective, how social emotional spaces, that the sense of meaning, the sense of community actually enhances learning and it helps people be more open to learning. But here's a quick timeline of who I am and what I've done since I've graduated SF State, and just constantly see themes in my life of working together with people and being really passionate about what can happen from that. And so I wanted to start off with some things to consider when we engage online, especially if we're teachers. And some of you aren't, but for those that have presented or those who are students in this call, maybe you might want to pipe in here too. So the first one to consider is that there are many studies show that we have shorter attention spans than ever before. So definitely in kids, but this affects all of us. And so the statistics and the numbers around what that specifically look like varies, but I think we can all agree that our attention seems to be more short. We tend to have a hard time focusing on one thing more so than usual these days. And there are many causes of that, as I put in the parentheses here. And then the next one is that according to some people, nonverbal communication represents 2/3 of all communication. So if we have a Zoom and we're just talking the whole time, maybe we're showing some visuals, but most of the communication is through verbal, that it makes it hard for us to stay engaged. So oftentimes when you're in person, and Eric actually mentioned this earlier when he was introducing me, there's body language, there's visual cues, there's sounds, and those types of communications help us stay engaged. They help us stay connected. So without that, it makes it challenging to be on Zoom. And so that's why when we build tools and ways of engaging, that can actually help mitigate the limits of online teaching and online spaces. And also, there's a lot of mental health and existential challenges we're all facing. And this is related to COVID, the shutdown of the economy, social unrest, the fires. There's many other environmental crises out there. And so, like I said earlier, this isn't something we can just leave outside of the door, outside of the classroom experience. Every Zoom space, every classroom, we carry what we bring, right? So this makes it hard. It makes it hard for students to be engaged. Maybe as a teacher, it makes it hard for you to show up fully too. There's a lot of expectations for teachers. So that's definitely something to consider. And then the other one, and we've mentioned this a few times before, imperfection and awkwardness is completely normal as we adjust to this format. And we tend to, be hard on ourselves or want things to be perfect, but we're all transitioning. And then the more we can normalize it with our students and with ourselves, the less it'll be a thing. And because we're still adjusting and getting to know how it feels to connect with each other through virtual spaces, it can be really helpful to set norms and agreements for each class. So Eric did that when we first started the Zoom call, he had a little list of some agreements and expectations to follow. So that could be like cameras on if you can, or participation is needed, or if please keep your audio off if you're not talking, or something like that. And it would be unique and different to your class. So sometimes having those agreements can really help as we adjust. And so anyone else want to share anything that they'd like to add to this list? Because I know that this only touches on a few, and the world is complex. There's a lot of different variables in play. Does anyone want to add anything to this?
I find that students engage more when they're doing some talking too. So it's not
Mhm.
always teacher led.
Yeah, well said, well said. That's a big one. Ken, you have your hand raised.
Yes. I'd suggest also having them post a picture of themselves if they're not
Mm.
able to turn their camera on. At least there's some presence for them that's specific to what they look like, and it really helps a lot.
Yeah, that is big. It makes a difference, I've noticed, because when I look at a sea of black frames, I just feel like, who's there? And then when I see their faces, it makes it more personal. And I think on whatever level we are, I think we all really hunger for connection and meaningful connection. And sometimes online, it's hard to do that. But the more we can introduce that and the more we can build that into our space, the more effective the classroom environment can be. So that's a good thought. So I did this very quickly, like 30 minutes before this presentation, and I forgot to add a title. So what you're looking at is what I thought are the 3 core components of building engagement and community online. And I actually feel like this would apply to in person too. But these kind of are the things that I've noticed in my experiences of doing restorative harm circles online, community building circles online, and I'm leading a lot of workshops with youth right now about various topics. So the first one is always the building relationships part. So in the small text on the left, here are some examples, and we're going to get into each of these further as we go. So a part of building relationships is having check-ins and rituals. So rituals sounds a little ethereal, but I think what rituals means is that we're doing something together and we're acknowledging it. So check-ins is a ritual. It's a way for everyone's voice to get in the room. It's a way for people to feel into some sort of common experience. I like to do checkouts too. So sometimes we have really good check-ins and then we just end the class. And sometimes having a little bow tie at the end where we can say, what did we learn? Or what's something you got is a ritual. And it helps build relationships, right? And breakout rooms, I've actually heard from a lot of the high schoolers I work with how breakout rooms really help ease the social anxiety. Sometimes when we want whole class conversations, there's this sense of overwhelm and intimidation, like, whoa, am I going to talk over someone? I don't know. And it gets a little awkward. So sometimes having a breakout room with 1 or 2 more people, it helps ease you into the conversation. And I think a part of what building relationships too is we make it personal. We build a relationship with ourselves, which is our primary relationship. Like, how does this content apply to me? And then how do I share that with others and see who's different than me and what I have in common with other people? And these both are ways to build relationships. And then the second one is the norms and class agreements. So like I said, I did this fast and I duplicated one of them. But basically, we want to, it really helps to have those agreements in place. Like how can we be together so we're not confused and we're not like knowing where other people are at, right? So the best way to do it, in my opinion too, is to co-create the norms and expectations. So what I'll do with classrooms is we actually think about what we want to do. And I ask the whole class to contribute something. And then we vote on like the top 5 to 10. And it could look very differently for you, but just the whole idea of co-creating it versus I'm the teacher and here are the norms and expectations. Here's what I want from you. Well, the students also have a voice as well. And then the last one is nonverbal tools and practices. So I specifically said nonverbal because there's tons of tools and practices out there. And I think talking is going to be quite dominant in Zoom space because we have to talk and use our voice. So how do we build nonverbal tools and practices to balance out the verbalizing and the talking? I know for me, at least, when I'm on a Zoom call and it's all talking, my attention is just everywhere. And I just, quite frankly, feel bored. And so if we can build more visuals, use the chat box, I do a lot of polls and other digital tools. It breaks up the talking. It uses our other senses. And then I think another nonverbal tool is taking bio breaks and stretch breaks. So actually, Eric Pepper in our class, I think every 25 minutes, he would make us stand up and just do a bunch of dancing and stretching. And it really helped. And then one time he had us run down the hallway with our left leg down and our right arm up, and we'd switch to engage the left and right brain hemispheres. So there's different ways of doing the breaks, and it doesn't have to be some long 10-minute break. It could be just a quick dance break or a stretch break, or a mindful breathing break where I play music and just notice your breath. Notice any tension, right? You don't have to be a meditation expert to do those things.
Amber, if I can interrupt for a moment, what happens is that maybe you want to guide us all through a break at this moment. We've been going for a half an hour almost. It would be great.
Okay, sounds good. Well, let me just finish this last aspect of the nonverbal tools and then we can do a quick break. So the last one is reflective time. So a lot of what we're doing, especially in classes, we're engaging, we're thinking, we're applying. So having reflection time can help integrate all the different pieces we're holding. That could be journaling or using music like I did earlier. Okay, so let's take a quick break, shall we? So I see more video cameras on and I appreciate that. And so for those who don't have it off, invite you to turn it on, but if not, tune in. So let's see, quick break. Why don't we just quickly stand up? So if you can, just stand up. And yeah, just maybe start feeling, maybe just start shifting our attention to our feet. So when we stand up, our feet helps us keep grounded. And just maybe closing the eyes. Just noticing your breath coming and going. And maybe in a moment, taking your hands and just start shaking your hands out. So wringing it out, loosening any tension. Great. Feeling any tension relief that might travel all the way up to your arms. And then just slowly setting them down. And then we're going to roll our shoulders. And so we're going to let our breath inform this movement. So as we inhale, our shoulders go up. And as we exhale, shoulders go back down. Let's just do that a few more times. Inhale, shoulders up. And exhale, shoulders down. Maybe the next 30 seconds, just doing any stretch or movement that would feel best to you without any sort of guided direction. Oh yeah, the side stretches always get me. Great. All right, and just taking a last breath here and just slowly transitioning back to your seat, back to the presentation. Did that help for you all just to get into our bodies a little bit? Eric, thank you for the suggestion. Great. Yeah, so it's always important. So those breaks don't have to just be like a long 10-minute bio break or a 5-minute. It could be something you do together. You could do even a game during the break. So yeah, I'm gonna go back to my screen. All right, so these are the 3 core practices that I've noticed to be really helpful. Not just online, definitely in person too, but online, having a clear structure is really important, so. All right, oops. Okay, so the first one is the building relationships. So I talked about this when I was going through it, but the check-in rituals and check-out rituals can help get everyone's voice in the room. It creates a sense of connection and shared experience. And many of you might already be doing this, right? So these are just basics and introductory pieces. And the breakout room helps reduce social anxiety. It invites participation. It changes the environment. So sometimes on Zoom, it's like you're just in this window and it just keeps going. And so the breakout room helps change your environment, even if it's a virtual one. And for me, when we have whole class conversations, part of me just doesn't even know where to begin. It's like there's so many different pieces. So when breakout rooms happen, I with another person or two can actually help deepen the dialogue around whatever content we're discussing and exploring. So that really helps me, for example. And then also that last part is making it personal. We learn the best when we find meaning out of what we're learning, and we learn the best when we apply our personal experiences to the content. So it's not abstract, we're taking our personal experiences and making meaning out of it through what we're reading and the content you're delivering your students. So if people have different opinions in this, or if students are in here, please pipe up. I'd love just all the different perspectives that a topic can have. So please do so. And so here are some getting to know each other questions that you could do in the check-in, or you could do it in the chat box, right? So a lot of students might not be comfortable checking in with others, especially if you haven't been building into this, like, oh, all of a sudden we're supposed to share our voice, and that's a little intimidating for some people. So maybe you might want to do this in a breakout room or the chat box, or even a personal reflecting journaling time. So there's a lot of different options, but here are some examples. Like the first one is so simple. How are you? What's up for you today? Oftentimes we're jumping from class to class, task to task, and it really helps to just slow it down. It's often surprising how simple that question is. And so maybe just taking the moment just to scan the list of questions. And if anyone wants to pipe up and mention a question that stands out to them, or a question that isn't here that you think would be helpful in terms of getting to know each other. Anyone have anything to share?
Just
So
a question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Amber, these are check-in questions in part, or can they be used a number of ways? Not sure how you're framing this.
They can be used in a number of ways. I think the main point of this is that there's so many different possibilities. And so the idea of these questions are we're getting to know each other more. So oftentimes in classrooms, you never really get to talk or meet with your students. And I definitely felt that in my undergraduate studies. Like I often didn't feel like I even knew the person sitting next to me. And especially on Zoom, that can even be exacerbated in the sense of I don't know who the person is in this class. And so if we create spaces where we get to know each other more and hear each other, and I think someone in the chat for our check-in question put in that this person noticed that students really want to share their experiences and hear the experiences of other people and what they're going through. So the more we can build that space, I think the more we can create an engaging and meaningful connection in class. And I think also having time to share what's up for us helps relax our body. It helps us relax into the space. And when we relax, we can learn more easily. The more we can create more questions, it creates more meaningful dialogue, and it creates more of that personal application that we're talking about. So here are some class-related questions you can use. So it's not just about the emotional piece and the well-being piece, but as it relates to what we're learning, you know, what are we doing here? So first one is, when looking at the material, what are a few words that come up for you? And I like that. I personally like that when my grad school professor does that one. What trends or patterns are you noticing in our class or in our readings? What are you noticing in your environment or the past week that relates to what we're learning? So in my OD program, we're learning about change. And so the check-in question was, what in the past week, what's something that, what was the exact question she asked? What is a change that happened in your life this past week and how did you feel about it, right? And so there's definitely ways we can apply what we're learning to kind of our own personal experiences. So this one I like too. What's one thing you want to get out of today? Especially if they know what they're learning. Well, what's something you want to get out of it? Or given our work so far, what do you feel best about? What do you still need more clarity on? Sometimes as teachers, we run through what we want to talk about, and oftentimes we don't get the feedback we need so that we can actually deliver the content and it's not just being thrown at people. So the more we can get more feedback from them, the more they feel heard, and the more you're informed about what you can do to help best support everyone. What is something you came across recently that gave you hope or inspiration? What new connections are you making given our work together? What narratives or perspectives do you not see in our conversation, in our readings? And this one's a big one, right? I think every reading has its limits and there are other perspectives that we can bring in. So the last one is what surprised you or challenged you about what we're reading? So these are just examples. There's definitely multiple ways you can say these different questions, but these are some starting points. And you can do like a breakout room for this, chat box, journal reflection time. You can even have like students, I don't think this would be that practical if you had like 100 students, but you can even have them email it to you for some one-on-one relationship building. Now that's a little harder with university levels. So it's up to you to decide what works best for you. But the whole point is that there's definitely options, and a lot of creativity can come from you playing with how do you engage and build relationships with each other. Here's about the norms and agreements. So when we have shared expectations, it helps build a sense of common ground and mutual respect. Like we all know how to respect each other. Sometimes we don't know how to respect each other because we don't know what the other person needs. So if we have shared common needs, it reduces awkwardness and it creates more clarity online. And that when people co-create it, they're more likely to be more engaged because they actually helped create it. So that's something to consider if you want to do the norms and agreements. So here's an example. Ken Burrows, who's in the Zoom call, he and I co-hosted a digital living conference last year. And it was like 200 people and there was lots of people and it was a really big turnout. It was our first ever experience doing something on Zoom that big. But here's what we decided on. And I did a screenshot of the page, but there are definitely Zoom expectations and norms we can integrate in our class. I mean, a big one is that practicing self-care. So hydrating, moving your body if you're sitting too long, being clear that if we hear a lot of unnecessary noise or disruption, please mute. But if you don't mute, you can be locked out, right? So we had a lot of different Zoom and so expectations. So whatever this looks like for you in your class, it might be helpful to build this in. Okay, and here are some of the nonverbal tools and practices to maintain engagement. So as we said before, the journaling, the silent reflection time really helps, and it helps integrate the material and it creates connections. So oftentimes the connections don't come up right away. Like Jean said, to be asked to say something right away is a little challenging. So when we get that time to really reflect, and take some space, some quiet space, that helps us integrate. So we're not just talking at people the whole time like I am with you all. And it, yeah, like I said, it just helps break up the verbal noise. A lot of the talking can be exhausting. And then taking breaks. So recommended to take breaks every 45 minutes to an hour, or in Eric's case, every 25 minutes. So it depends on the content too. If you're already doing breaks in the sense of like you're having them watch videos, you're having them do breakout rooms, that helps. But if you're giving like one presentation and you're just going through it because it's a long one, it might be helpful to take a more frequent breaks. And I've noticed that sometimes short breaks, frequent short breaks are better than few long breaks. So whatever works, and you can even ask your students, what would work best for you? Do you want short breaks or long breaks more? And the more their voices in the room and the more they get a time to refresh the mind, the more likely they're going to stay engaged as well. And then the last part, the visuals, polls, chat box, and other digital tools, once again, helps break up the verbal noise, and it engages different types of sensory experiences. So we're not just using our mouth or hearing, but we're also seeing and we're feeling. So that can be really effective. So some of the virtual tools, and there's so many, like really so many, that there could be like a ever running list. And yet I feel like these ones are the most simple and just the most easy to set up. Like you don't need to have a lot of digital skills. So the chat box is big and we tried doing that. And there's some things called Google Forms. And I don't know if any of you have used Google Forms. Have you? Just a show of hands. Okay. Okay, a few people raised their hands. So Google Forms is a really cool way to engage, and we did this during the Digital Living Conference. And this will require you to learn how to use Google Forms, but I would argue that it's somewhat simple, and there's a lot of tutorials online. And I wish I could just go and teach you now, but it's going to take some time. So for example, here is one of the panels we did. I'll just show you an example. And so here's what they saw when they got the link. So the panel was about unplugging and practices for balancing our technology, our tech life balance. So I had them choose, how many total hours do you think you can use your phone? What social media apps do you use? How do you feel after using your phone? And they submitted. And here are the responses. So I love this because what I did was I screen shared this after they responded, because they responded in the moment, and I gave them about 2 minutes to respond, and I played music. And then I screen shared this back at them. Well, look who's in the room. So 68.1% said they use their phone more and technology more than 4 hours. And what social media apps do you use? And people listed it here. And then how do you feel after using your phone? And you can just see a sea of tired, insecure, exhausted, empty, distracted. So it's interesting to have people see who's in the room without all the talking. And here's another one. This is the other panel. So do you sometimes feel like avoiding the news? Yes, 89.5%. If you avoid the news, what are the reasons for it? And then they were able to write in what they felt. So these can be really effective ways of engaging in different ways and nonverbal ways. And then Blessing actually said in the chat that she plays with Padlet. And so Padlet is another one I like to use. And so Padlet is a virtual collage template. So it's super easy to set up, and you get 5 free Padlets, and then you have to pay $14 a month, I believe. But basically you set up, this is something I did with my high schoolers. You can set up a question like I did on the top, and then you send them the link and people respond, and it becomes this virtual collage, and it can be really effective. And you can do it around your content. It doesn't have to be about, their emotional experiences. So there's a lot of responses here. So that's one. And then here's another one I did in a harm circle about what happens when we feel triggered. So this was with a class. And then here's another one. How do we honor and create relationship agreements? Because there was a lot of drama happening in that class. And so we built this in here. So Padlet's a really interesting and very easy format. And I would argue it's really easy to set it up. And there's a lot of tutorials. So lastly, there's also Loom. And so Loom is really interesting. Loom allows you to present anything on your screen. So you don't have to screen share. It allows you to present, and then it'll have a camera where you can speak in the bottom corner. So there's still a sense of you in the room, and it's super easy. You just sign up and you download the program. And what it does is when you turn it on, it literally records your desktop, and it also records your face, and you can always go back and edit it. And then it saves as a file. So you can even upload it on a YouTube channel for those who are doing asynchronous teaching. Right. So these are just some examples, and I actually wanted to stop there because there's so many different types. And I think that if we start building relationships first, that's the first step. And then we can slowly start implementing virtual tools. And oftentimes chat box and screen shares are enough. You might not need to use the Padlet and Loom. So I'm noticing the time, it's 12:53. I want to get to questions, but we're finalizing my presentation, and I wanted to make this somewhat simple. And so just to take a moment to just feel into everything that was just shared right now. And knowing that this year we've been into, for SF State at least, I think you all have been in school for like a little over a month. So knowing that this year will come with its own set of challenges, which can bring rich opportunities for growth and discovery of our own internal resources and strengths. So when we think about utilizing this challenging time so that we can discover more of ourselves and our own internal resources, and also build the good in our lives and how we can meet the moment in a powerful way. We're all experiencing our own unique challenges, and whether you're a teacher or whether you're not a teacher and you're just in here to be more curious to learn more about online engagement. And so given the challenges we're facing, what are some core character strengths that you think would be helpful in your process, that would be a game changer for you? So this is a graphic from the VIA Institute, and they talk about, from a positive psychology perspective, there are 24 core strengths that guide and influence our realities, and it helps us handle and manage our stress and life challenges, and it helps us develop meaningful relationships with people. So just maybe choosing a few that really speak to you, like when you see it, you're like, that's me. And if we had more time, I actually plan to get you all in breakout rooms and to discuss it. But since we only have 5 minutes and I want to leave at least a few minutes for questions, maybe just typing it in the chat or talking out loud. So for those that want to type in the chat, please do so. And those that want to share out loud with the whole group, I invite that as well. Anyone want to share anything that stands out to them?
That was a lot to digest, and I know I'm still on the intake of all you've given us. So I lost a little bit about that last piece. So you're suggesting really working on our own character strengths or virtues would be one way of helping us also lead an online discussion. Did I hear that right?
Well, you could do this with your class, but just because we started a little later and I wanted to bring room for breakout rooms and we don't have the time, I wanted to finalize my presentation with a little checkout conversation between us. So not talking about our classes and how we might build it in there, but just us in this room right now. There's a lot of information here. And this usually we can't know everything right away. So it's a whole process. So thank you.
Amber, I really like to thank you very much. So an applause, hands up or whatever, yay for all of us. But I want to make a comment or two. I really appreciate the tools you shared and guiding us through this. But the one piece which I think is critical also for presence is what you did not speak about. And those are at least a couple of things which I think underlie, it's almost like the meta communication, the meta process. And that is the person called Amber, because as she is there, she has a sense of enthusiasm and engagement that pulls you right in. We want to be able to teach that as well. That's different from the mechanics of Zoom. And the second one was the critical one, I think, of your language. I was so impressed time and time again with your sense of permissiveness, your sense of enthusiasm. You're inviting other people and the non-judgmental labeling. And again, that takes significant training. And as a person presenting, we are not aware of that, maybe, that we're doing it, and yet that gives the framing. So in that sense, I think you role modeled that, maybe knowingly or unknowingly, superbly. And I think that's a part that, so often we all want to learn. So I want to thank you again for both the informational component, but also role modeling how you do that permissiveness. How do you make that invitational part? How do you avoid the non-blaming? It's like saying, okay, turn your cameras on versus saying, you know, if possible, invite the person to join. And I thank you. I think that was just superbly done. And I'm very impressed. Thank you for sharing yourself onto the media.